So first of all, it's 11 o'clock on a Monday, so I'm hoping everyone's awake by now. A nice bright day as well. So we're going to just start talking about the impact colour has on humans themselves and on our eyes. So maybe when you woke up this morning, coming out of the dark and into a bright, sunny morning, you only have some degree of kind of pain in your eye whilst it slowly wakes up, and it's a different size in the pupil that makes that happen. The bigger the pupil, obviously, the darker the colour you're normally looking at, and the smaller the pupil, the brighter the colour that you're looking at. And that has an impact on our eyes and how we feel about things. So if you all stare at the screen at the moment, and we go from a dark black like this, and you just dwell on that for a few seconds, and then we move into a brighter colour like that, you should feel something actually happen in the eye just for a brief moment whilst your pupils transition from one size to another to allow that colour to happen. So that's an important thing to appreciate in branding and colour theory. You've also got to look at those two colours in particular. They're very strong in contrast from one to the other. And throughout nature, those two colours have come about basically to say to people that this is dangerous. So a wasp in particular is saying to any another species or a human that this is potentially dangerous. And this is something that we've got used to over the years and started to think maybe we use colour in that way. You've obviously got a poisonous dart frog and snakes and tigers, lions, the list kind of goes on. We've got used to the fact that species know that's dangerous. So it becomes normal for us to then say to ourselves, well, in the human environment that we've created and in signage, black and yellow would be a sensible colour to pick for signs that maybe cause danger in some way. So this is obviously a slippery floor, but you could look at hazardous signs and toxic signs. All of those signs are typically made up of black and yellow. Probably come from the history of the danger side of things, but also the stark contrast between the two. So the sign is very clear and very visible and gets noticed, obviously for us to take action and be careful or step away from something. And then obviously sometimes those two colours are used in a particular brand. So in this case, Netto have decided to take black and yellow as their two core colours. And so you can sometimes think those two colours put together give a sense of like a cheaper, lower level brand. And Netto have gone down that path. But Netto have obviously used a thick typeface as well. They've got a cartoon dog illustration. So all of those things make Netto feel like a cheaper brand, and that's exactly what they want to achieve. But it doesn't always mean that just because they picked yellow and black, that yellow and black then becomes a lower value color palette for a brand, because and then we look at Selfridges, they use yellow and black as well. So color theory itself is not set in stone that one color combo will definitely make it cheap or expensive. It also comes down to the overall brand itself and positioning, size of type. Obviously, then you get to things like physical spaces, and the difference between a store of Netto and a store of Selfridges are very different as well. So sometimes the colors can be shared in different spaces for good reason, but it's how you execute it that makes an actual difference. So then we start looking at colors more broadly across the spectrum and how that has an impact on our eyes and how we feel about things. So as I said before, the brighter colors make your pupil smaller, the darker colors make your pupil larger, and green sits in the middle of that, which is generally where you're kind of most at ease. So it's no surprise when you get into things like a surgery that over time, these scrubs have moved from being white to greeny blue. So that gives a more relaxed feeling in this particular space. But it's also the direct opposite to red on the color wheel. So it allows a surgeon to be able to concentrate more and differentiate between what is going on in the room. It just helps them to perform better in that environment. And then we get into how colors are created. So you've got RGB colors versus CMYK colors as well. RGB is all things you see through a screen. CMYK is traditional print. And in the modern world, more and more brands are creating assets that actually exist online. So RGB becomes even more important. CMYK, you could argue, is becoming secondary, whereas 20 years ago, it would have been the other way around. So within your own brand, it's important to make sure you establish rules for these colors, but also maybe consider, does RGB actually lead your decision making, and you force that color forward because most of your assets are now being delivered through a screen, and maybe you compromise on the CMYK and other printed assets because you're never going to get the colors, but you want your brand to be celebrated the best it possibly can be in the environment where people see it most. So we go to like a basic color wheel. There's obviously 6 colors here. They're made up of primary and secondary colors. The primary colors are highlighted here, so they're red, yellow, and blue. And if you look around the wheel, if you use yellow and blue together, obviously you make green. Green is complete opposite to red on the spectrum. So going back to the Scrubs analogy, when colors are opposite like that, they can become complementary because they don't have the other color in it. So there's no red in green in this particular instance. Yellow and blue make up the green. Same with purple and red make up purple. And so purple and yellow then become complementary and so forth. So you've got to understand how the colors work in the first place to start to make decisions in your communications and within your brand. And then you get into something like a supermarket hierarchy in the UK, and you'll notice that Waitrose and Sainsbury's essentially just use one color. And then you get into kind of the middle market, other colors start to creep in. And then as you come further down, you get more colors added, more vibrancy, and slight clashing of color as well. And if we take these two in particular, very successful brands, Aldi and Lidl, both have chosen to use primary colors in different ways. But primary colors put together can give a sense of being a cheaper brand. So it's exactly what they want to achieve. We kind of associate primary colors with like kids' toys and building blocks and things like that. So it's a little bit more playful, feels a bit more childlike, and then suggests that this might be a cheaper brand. So that's exactly what they want to achieve. Absolutely fine. Whereas the other colors, other brands, sorry, they want to use less colors because that slowly makes you feel a little bit more premium as well. So we could take the Lidl logo though, and we could strip that down, not only make it look high end, but we could actually change it from a supermarket brand to something completely different. So as you eliminate color and tweak the type and space things out, suddenly Lidl can be a high-end fashion brand quite quickly. And if we didn't know Lidl as a cheap supermarket and we saw this as a high-end fashion brand, we'd believe that that's what it was. This comes down to stripping back color, and kind of owning one color is really important in a lot of spaces. So what percentage does color account for brand recognition? So there's a lot of studies done on this, but it's generally, as a rule, over 80% of brands are recognized by color alone. So it goes to show how important color is in the way that we go about making decisions. So a quick question to you, this is where you get a chance to drop something in the chat. What color is the packaging for Rice Krispies? If you want to join in and throw in a color that you think Rice Krispies is for the packaging in the chat, Amy will have a little look at the answers.
Yeah, we've got some blues. Blue and yellow, blue, lots of blues.
So predominantly blue by the sounds of it. That's exactly right. So that's exactly what they are. And then another little quiz for you then. So it's blue. It's quite a broad range of blue. Out of 1, 2, or 3, put a number 1, 2, or 3 as to which tone of blue is Rice Krispies, 1, 2, or 3.
Yes, everyone has said 1.
Okay. So let's have a look at the packaging. So yeah, 1. So not only was it blue, but it was a bright kind of cyan type blue. And your brain is telling you that when you're shopping for them without you realizing it's saying it. So it's no surprise then that Tesco decide to have the same cereal and pick exactly the same color. So in this instance, instead of competing against someone and saying, I want a different color because I want to stand out and be different, they're purposely using something that's already in the human psyche and saying we maybe steal a little bit from Rice Krispies here and show that we offer it at a better price. But then you get into a bigger wheel like this where there's only so many colors on the planet you can pick from anyway, but most brands will try and define a particular color and own one color. When brands start to add more color, they can actually, make the brand weaker over time rather than strengthen it by being identified by one color. But you should be looking at your audience as a whole and saying, is there a gap in the color wheel where you could go into if you're creating a new brand? And if not, be aware of the ones that are there so you can at least know who you're competing against. And it's important because this is a brand architecture structure. There's 4 ways that you can put your brand into an architecture. If you look at FedEx, they're classed as like a monolithic brand because there's a consistency to it. Apple is a sub-brand, Marriott is endorsed, and Procter & Gamble has a house of different brands. But if you look at FedEx as an example, I think they've got it wrong myself. There's times where adding color isn't really needed. So FedEx are known for being purple and orange. There is no reason why all of those brands that they've got can't stay purple and orange, because every single one of them has then a descriptive word underneath it. So I know it's FedEx Express or I know it's FedEx Ground. It's also very rare that I'll engage with 2 of these entities at the same time and add any confusion to it, because if I'm dealing with freight, that exists in a specific space, doesn't need to be red. So to actually get better ownership, they could have kept everything purple and orange, and actually it allows them for expansion, because they'll run out of color going down this particular path, and then you'll have brands that actually look similar, and then you've got to try and explain why they're different. Amazon, similar space, they're kind of monolithic, but then they also have Kindle and Whole Foods, which kind of puts them in a different architecture. They've also randomly decided to have Prime as blue. Again, for me, no reason for that at all. They'd have been better off keeping it orange and keeping consistency with the black and orange brand throughout everything. There's also inconsistency of how they go about now applying the smile. It doesn't go to the A to Z anymore when you've got the word Prime. So there's a bit of inconsistency going on the Amazon brand, and it wouldn't surprise me if they try and tighten that up over the next couple of years. Then you've got people like Apple that don't go down color theory. They don't add color to everything they produce. They keep things way more monolithic. In this instance, most things are black or white or silver, but essentially it's kind of monotone. Pretty good at consistency, apart from they make mistakes. You know, the word watch here is in caps for some reason. Everything else is upper and lower. There's no reason for that. It's just a mistake in my eyes. And the rest of them all start with a cap letter, but then TV starts with a lowercase t. So there's inconsistency in the way they apply the type and the structure, but the color is a bit more consistent than some other brands. And then you've got consistency like General Electric, where they just own the blue. Again, typographically, they get it wrong. They change the font from time to time when they've added new ones. Sometimes they have it in caps, sometimes they have it upper and lowercase. So everyone makes mistakes and doesn't have the right amount of control. But from a color point of view, they're owning the one color, which makes more sense to me in most cases. Then you've got things like BBC that rebranded recently. They obviously add color to different areas of what they offer. Again, you could argue, does it need color? Does that add anything to it? But if they keep adding things, it'll run out of color, clearly. So they've got words here, they've got graphics, all of them differentiate each of those things. You've got to ask yourself, do I really need loads of color? Is it of a benefit or not? And if you take it a step further, they've got here, let's take sounds, for example, has been applied for orange, but orange also is represented by Radio 2. It's also represented by Wales. And so you're now starting to question, why is orange associated to those 3 random things? You can do the same for Bite Size, it's purple, Channel 4's purple, and Scotland Radio's purple. So it can start to add to confusion as well if it's not properly thought through. If you're going to go down color theory or color ranges, you need to really think, how am I going to apply those to the brand? And actually, is it future-proof, or will I run out of color and start to actually cause more confusion? So we're going to get to the final part here. As you can see from what I've said very fast, there's a real importance in color. It's lovely that it exists. It's lovely that we can celebrate it, but it's also really important just to consider how you go about using it in your brand. And adding more color quite often isn't the best thing to do. Going back to the 80% recognition, if you can own that one color and be known for it, people are going to remember your brand for longer and be able to make quicker decisions on it. So these are here on the screen at the moment, really nice visuals, illustrations, really celebrating color. And that's because this is a book all about color. So having attended today, you now have a chance to win the book. And it's going to be based on you're guessing brands just by me showing color alone. So it's your chance to put comments in the chat again. We will collate the answers. And at the end, we'll randomly pick one. We'll let you know that you've won the book and we'll get it out in the post to you. So you all ready? First one. Which brand do you think this is just from these two colors alone?
Yeah, all but one are the same brand.
Okay. Next one, just one color, purple.
Yeah, most are the same, saying the same thing, yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. It's working so far. Final colors.
That was fast to those couple of people that did it first. Yeah. Looks like everybody has basically got them all right, pretty much.
Brilliant. Well, that's what we were hoping. Otherwise, the whole color theory thing had completely failed, hadn't it? So it sounds like most people are in the running to win the lovely book all about color. Hopefully, in the 18 minutes that we're nearly at already, that's how fast this thing flies past, you've learned something about color and how you can look at your own brand and review it now, or if you're creating a new brand, consider it for the future. But planning your color structure and for sub brands and products is really, really important. And trying to own a color or a couple of colors is really important as well. Because if 80% of brands globally are recognized by color alone, it's time to take it really seriously. So I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. Hopefully we've learned something. Enjoy your Monday and the rest of the week, and we'll see you again on the next series.